Hi, good evening, everyone. Is it audible to everyone? Can you hear me? Yeah, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Yes, before understanding today's concepts, let's try to recollect it, what we were understanding in the previous section, and then we'll continue. Yeah, in the last section, or last 2 or 3 sections, if we just conclude it, yeah, S3 is one of the important service which we are trying to understand it. Yeah, the first section, the where we were going through that's like how to create the buckets and objects uploading and yeah, versioning options. Yes, how do we enable the versioning and advantage of that, the versioning concepts. Yeah, this was first class or first session which we are trying to understand it. And then the second, another important session which you're trying to understand on S3 is that is securities. Yes, if you are facing that interviews, especially the policies point of view, or yeah, defining that that's uh, methods which we have the studies about encryption and decryption. But that's they don't stress it that much, but policies are the very important. That is a policy documentation. How do we generate it and how do we use the statements adding to the same policy document? That is very important concept. And another one is yeah, in the same day, like which we are trying to understand, how do we enable the static website hosting? Yeah, S3 would like to host it as the website. How do we use it? S3 service for the website hosting. That is one more concept. But here, the main point what we have is the public access is required. At a bucket level, we need to enable it, and as well as the object level also. Yeah, there was one more concept, and encryption and decryption methodologies. That is AES 256 or KMS. Yeah, those two methodologies with exercise where we are observing that. Yeah, there's a three concepts, main three concepts. Remember that on the S3 security. One is encryption decryption methodologies, and second one is ACLs, that is a control list. The read and write operations about current owner and public access and other AWS accounts. Yeah, how do you define that? The ACLs list, that is another important section. And third section is policy document definition. Yeah, those three concepts on the security which we are trying to understand it. Then we had in that last section about understanding about what are the different storage classes are available. Yes, in which context, which storage class is going to helping that. That is, yeah, as a cost optimization techniques point of view from the S3, how do we define the rules on current version objects and as well as the older version of objects? Yeah, expiries which we can define it are deleting that the expired objects or old version of that objects. So those rules we can define it in the management section of the S3. But classes wise, important classes, remember that frequently access, that is standard class, then infrequently access class, that is yeah, almost the both are the same, but infrequently access, that is something which we have is less cost compared with the first one, and availability is 99.90%. Yes, that is durability. Durability, okay, that's providing both all the classes, but availability 99.90%. But S3 frequently 99.9999%. Yeah, that's about two important storage classes, and third one is Glacier. Glacier 90 days after that. It can be marked like as a backup copies. Backup copies to download it takes some time, but those are all available. Yeah, availability is some time is required to download it, available of that objects. But yes, which you can use it with less cost. all the backup files, that is archive files especially, the which we can keep it in the Glacier. But a Glacier, again, it is having the two approaches. One is a Glacier, and the second one is a deep Glacier. That is, after the 180 days, we can move into that objects into deep Glacier. That is very, very, very less cost compared with all the other classes. But download time is also latency issues will be have. Yeah, so there are the points that's we are trying to understand on S3. So are you clear about these concepts? Any queries, questions, please let me know before moving to that next another important concept, that is the networking side VPCs. Have done this the practice of the project S3 project. I didn't see this anyone sharing this. That's the project details. But have you done or have come? I mean, have you gone through this first of all? No one. I don't see this anyone responding to that. Are you getting my points? I mean, that's the S3, the website hosting project. One thing which I was giving this, right? Have completed or not? Say yes or no. That would be helpful for me to move to this to the next concept. Okay, I see this no. So why? What's happened? I mean, so is it? Do you understand that project or not? Or you don't have the time to work it on it, or you don't have the interest to practice on it? That. So what is the reason that would be? So I didn't see there's anyone practicing that project. So you don't want the projects, you just want that like only in the classes. Next, another one more important project, real-time project we have. But if you don't do this, then that means you don't have the interest to complete the project. Then you don't want to share that project. Once VPC is over, then I'm going to share it. One more the project, the three-tier application architecture, how do we design it, or what are the components that we need to create it? That means so far what are the services which we are trying to understand from AWS, that is the overall project. But before that, it should be completed this project. So what's happened? I mean, that is don't want to practice that. Let me know. Okay, you have 4 classes lag, so you are completing them. So not required to say sorry, but yeah. Okay, didn't find the time this week to practice and will try to complete it as early as possible. Yeah, good. Okay. But if you practice it, that would be helpful to you, not for me. So understanding the statement and working on it. Yeah, so in the once you join in the infrastructure, they just give that the problem statement. And you need to analyze it and you need to the complete the task. But if you'd like to get that exposure, yes, if you have practiced here, some little bit exercises on it, then that will be helpful definitely. Once you are getting the chance of this, the infra and working on it, yes, on this AWS, definitely that will be helpful. So yesterday you got some time to practice on it because of some other activity where I couldn't join. But during that time, yes, the where you can take the chance of it, these pending activities, and try to work it on it. So I'm expecting maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow it should be completed. So let's see this. So how many of you are going to come up with that? Can I expect this by tomorrow or day after tomorrow? Can you give me that when can you complete it? At least that one. If you hardly spend the time, that is maximum that 1.5 hour, you can complete that task. S3 static website, I mean, uploading some files and creating the static website hosting, and then defining that the policy document for the public access. And one small service that's which you need to know that is CloudFront, and a CloudFront mapping to the S3 object. Just a simple 4 tasks. Even each task, it doesn't take that's more than 10 minutes. Uploading that one static project, and then the static project configuring as a static website hosting, and then policy document configuration, and mapping that S3 website URL through the CloudFront. Simple 4 tasks. Okay, so practice it. But on the basis of the submission, then the next project will be assigned. Okay, good. Let's continue. Another important concept that is about VPC. So far, whatever the services which we are talking that, all these are all very important. These are all like as we were understanding, Route 53 to the load balancer to the auto scaling group. Within that auto scaling group, with the launch in template concept, and with the template defining that instances with the desired capacity, maximum or minimum capacities, and then defining that the policies. Yeah, and initially like IAM service, and then yeah, EC2 service, and S3, RDS. Yeah, so try to recollect all these things. But next project, whatever you are going to get it, all these services are included in that project. So you need to configure from the Route 53 to the backend RDS service with the networks. The whatever we are going to talk it today's concepts. Yes, let's move into that. The another important service from the AWS, that is VPC. So what is this VPC? Why do we need to go for that? The VPC service from AWS as at least a basic service for about our infra. Yeah, what is VPC if you try to understand it? So, like, what are the resources which are trying to create it so far about EC2 instances or RDS's point of view? We are using the default the network so far. Default networks. So the public IP address which are accessing that of the EC2 instances or RDS instances. So that is we are getting from the default network. But the default network using that always that is not recommended. Not always, that is not at all recommended. So we need to have that about our own private networking area. to manage that about our AWS resources. Why do we need that? The private networks is private or the public? Yes, we will come back to that. But why do we need to have the private area is what are the EC2 instances or RDSs databases which are going to launching? It should be managed in our specific private network zones. Yeah, a private subsection of AWS that we control in which we can place about our AWS resources such as EC2 instances and databases. And we will be having the full control over who has access to the AWS resources. So the whatever we are going to placing inside about our VPCs, yes, we'll be having the full control on it. Simple, like as we are talking about it, AWS is a public cloud, right? Public cloud. You also can create account and yes, I mean use the resources of AWS. Or I also can create account in AWS and I also can create EC2 instances and RDS services. But how do you protect about your resources which you are creating in your account or in your data center, data center, whatever you are planning that, the EC2 instances or databases, how do you protect in that AWS account or in my account? How do I protect my resources? So that is about VPCs, as simple as it is. Suppose if you just talk it in the apartment. So apartment like who are having that authorized access, yes, they will be having their own flats, right? And each flat is having, yes, that's the owner, he's having the full control on it. The same thing now, like AWS, we are using is nothing but who are having that account, yes, they can access the resources. But what are the resources which we have? So that should be placed in their private area, private networks. That networks how to create it is, that is VPC, as simple as it is. It is kind of about our own flat which we have in our apartment. But in that flat again, you have those like main hall, everyone can access it. I mean, everyone in the sense, yes, authorized person, they can come it and they can use that hall, no issues. But we have the private rooms, so where only authorized person can enter into that. So like the same thing within that VPC, if we just talk it, it is kind of the flat which contains about public and private access. Yeah, so VPC, we are going to talk it with public, private. Yes, these the kind of, I mean, accessing, controlling to launch it about our AWS resources. Yeah, what are the main components are required? Yes, if we are going to talk it that the VPC, yes, as we are talking about it, this is entire about our apartment. And within that apartment, yes, like in your own, the flat. So anyone is coming to that, yes, through that's about your, yeah, the main door. And they can access about your main hall, but you will be having the private rooms area as well as so public and a private. But before entering to that, yes, who is the person, that's person entering into that, or whether he's having that allow access or not, and if he's having that allow access and which that like I mean the which area he can access about it. That is controlling all that levels of the AWS resources wise. If we just talk it, that is we say that the VPC. But VPC, if you are going to creating is nothing but there are some resources we need to talk it. Yes. So anyone who is coming thus from that internet access or through the internet. So whether yeah, the internet, all the request routing to that through the routing table which is going to use it NACL. It is kind of the firewall, and the firewall to that entering into the EC2 instances and which are in that the public subnet, public area. And from the public subnets to that, the backend private subnets. But what about all these things one by one? If you go talk it, they're all the components. VPC, if you just try to understand it, they're all the components which we need to remember it. What are those? Internet gateway, routing tables, NACLs, and here we have the public subnets and private subnets. Within these subnets, we will launch it our resources, that is EC2 or databases. Yes, we launch it within the subnets. But before launching the EC2 or databases, what about all these components? Yeah, if you try to understand about our home network with internet access in our mobiles or laptops. So what are the main components that are helping about it? So first of all, you need to, if you need that for about our laptop or the mobile internet connectivity, the first of all, we need to get that we need to approach that internet service provider. That is Airtel or the Act Fiber Net or whatever we have. So we need to approach that service provider, and they are going to give us the cable wiring mechanism or modems. Yes, which we fix it that the modem or cable, and that cable which will be attached to that router. That is about our Wi-Fi. Now in our home, what are the devices that is required? Those devices can use this Wi-Fi, and through the Wi-Fi we can get that net access. So they're all important components. Service provider, he is going to give it through cable mechanism or modem mechanism. So with this, we use it about our Wi-Fi which will be connected to this the modem or cabling system or whatever that LAN mechanism which we have. So then through the wireless approach, which we can access the internet to the devices. So there are all the components which are helping them. But within this, suppose if that the modem is down or failed, if the modem got failed, that means all that internet access, shall we get it to the devices? Devices are connected to the Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi is not able to communicate to that external world. Internal, okay, we can communicate it, no issues. So we can access all the devices with the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is available, but net is not connected because the modem is down. So that means external communications, we lost it. The modem is down is nothing but external communication, we lost it. But internal devices, we can have the communication, no issues on it. But another example or another scenario, if you just try to understand it, but this the modem is okay from the internet service provider, it is working successfully. It is working correctly, but internal Wi-Fi is down. This device is down. Then what's going to happen this is you have a communication from the external to this. Yeah, external communication we can have it, but internal devices to get it this external communication, the main the device that is down. Yeah, these individual devices are okay, but the main the router, can we say this is a router or not? Yes, which receives the request from all the external communication from the modem, and it is going to sharing to that the devices. It is routing, it is kind of the router. But if the router is down, then we don't get it the internet from the even the public service provider, internet service provider, if it is okay also, we don't get that internet. So same concepts, if you convert into that diagram point of view, yes, internet if you need it, all the external communications, if you are expecting that, then you need to have that, the modem, and through, the modem which is attached with the routing table, that is Wi-Fi, router or switch, and this Wi-Fi is going to forward the request to the internal devices. Are you getting the points of it? So here there is a modem to that, the router or switch which we are using, that the Wi-Fi, and through the Wi-Fi, what our devices are getting the internet access. The same way, if you convert that into the VPC diagram, whatever we are talking this, but in the VPC terminologies, so all the external communications, whatever we are getting or whatever we need it for about our EC2 instances. Suppose in the EC2 instance, I need to install some packages. I need to install some Git, or I need to install some the Docker or Kubernetes resources. Internet is required, right? If you are going to install the package, is nothing but that package will be downloaded from the internet. But how to get it? The internet. Yeah. So like how does VPC is helping this is, so in our AWS, the VPC, the way we define with the internet gateway, this is helping about it. All the external communication to have it to about our yes, the resources. So what is the main the gateway? Internet gateway. In our, yes, like just talking about it, in the home network, this is a modem. But in the VPC terminology, we call it as internet gateway, which is helping about it to get it all the external communication, that is internet communications. But internet gateway, what are the requests which are receiving that, the public requests, how it is routing to that particular group of devices. Yeah, EC2 instances is these are all the resources which we have, and these resources require internet communicate. But through that internet, what all the requests are coming to that? Yeah, that will be routed to the particular subnet. You can have the multiple subnets. That is a group of the devices which we have. Maybe in this subnet, some instances in this subnet, some resources, or in this subnet, another resources. But how do we route into the particular subnet is, routing table is going to helping that. It is kind of, in our home network, we can say the router or switch. But in the VPC terminology, we will call it as routing table. Routing table you are creating is nothing but you are defining the router. So from the internet, which request is received, that request on the base of IP addresses to which subnet that you want to route it. That will be defined at routing table. The routing table, whenever it routes the request to the particular subnet, before the subnet, we have that one more level, that is a firewall. Already in the EC2 instance, we are talking that one kind of the firewall, that is, what is that EC2 level firewall, which we discussed? Yeah, EC2 level firewall, that is, yes, good, that is security group. But here we are not talking about it. Okay, the EC2 before entering, okay, security groups are helping that. But here we are talking about it routing the request to that particular group of devices. Group of devices before routing also, we have another level of firewall. So this is a subnet level firewall, we will call it. That's we call it as NACL, network ACL, access control list. In our S3 ACLs, how we are talking that the public access or the private access control list. The same thing, network access control list. This is going to evaluate the rules, okay, from which source of IP address the request is receiving, which will be allowed or not to enter into that subnet. So this is a firewall, which we can say, but this firewall is network level firewall. EC2 instance level firewall is security group, but a networking level firewall is NACL. So it is going to evaluate, I mean, here also we can define it allow or deny rules. How we are defining the security group. In the security group, we have only allow rules. Yes, from which IP address, that's for which port do you want to allow that. By default, that is denied. 80, if you don't enable it, you cannot access about your HTTP service. Or 22, if you don't enable it, you cannot access. That means by default, that is denied. If you need it, you need to define the allow rule. But NACL, yes, before entering into the network, yes, we can define the allow rules or the deny rules. Deny also we can define it. That will come back, understanding that the difference between NACL and security groups. But NACL, this is network level firewall. Yeah, this firewall will be evaluated, and if this is okay, then it is going to enter into the particular subnet. And in that subnet, yes, if it is the EC2 or a database, then the database level security groups or EC2 level security groups, that is again, it is going to check it for the particular port it is allowing that from that particular IP address or not. If it is allowed, then the EC2 instance which will be accessible. So main components, if you just conclude it, if you are talking the VPC overall is nothing but we should know how to define the end. These are all the very straightforward creation time, but we should know all these components. Yes, we should know internet gateways. We should know like a routing table. This is very, very important. And we should know that NACLs and that within that VPC subnets. So it is VPC, if you just think about it, this is about our total area about our flat. Suppose you have the 1000 square feet. Okay, the VPC is a total 1000 square feet. But within the 1000 square feet, what about the hall area or like a master bedroom or the secondary bedroom or kitchen area? Like how we are dividing that entire space. Here we can divide that entire VPC into subnets on the basis of the devices which we are going to launch it. How many devices which we need to place it in this area, how many devices which we need to place it in this area, and which one is a public area, which one is that the private one. So the VPC with subnets, and that subnets to allow into that firewalls, like about gates which we have. And before entering into that routing table is routing. Yes, anyone is accessing from that external, whether it will be allowed or not, checking that is an ACL, but which room it should be allowed, which room it should not be allowed, that is defined at routing table. Yes, there are the main the components of the VPC to protect about our resources which are creating within the networks. Yeah, before going to understand this VPC, the networking side, one of the important concept which we should know this is CIDR format. CIDR. Have got these CIDR notations and the networking concepts of Linux? Okay, so anyway, let me talk it that. Yes, before talking about that VPC and all these components, suppose if you're going to buy the flat, so what is the area of the flat, and what about the requirement, that is a square feet, how much that is required as per about our requirement. We need to have the some estimation, right? I mean some yeah, that like understanding, right? The same thing, the VPC if you're going to creating is nothing but yes, total how many devices you are planning to place it here. Total devices is nothing but how many total IP addresses that is required. Are you going to plan it in this in the VPC? That's the total IP address is something. Okay, 500 IP addresses required. Then as per the 500 IP addresses, you need to define about your VPC. Or you are expecting something 10,000 devices that you are planning to place it in this VPC. As per that, yes, you need to first design about your VPCs. Then you can split it. Okay, database to have it, how many IP addresses that is required. Or app servers to launch it, how many IP addresses that is required. Web servers to launch it, how many IP addresses that is required. So that is on the base of application requirement and a number of resources which are going to create it. Then we will come back to the subnets. But here, okay, let's assume that this subnet requires some 500 devices, 500 IP addresses. And this subnet is also required some 500. And this subnet is required some 200 devices, IP addresses. Devices which I use it is nothing but IP addresses. And this subnet which is required some 200. So 200 plus 200, 400, and plus 1000, 500, 500 for the total. Yeah, 1400. So as per that 1400, the IP addresses requirement point of view, you need to define about your VPC. That is the total area of the flat. Total devices, how many required in that VPC? That is VPC. And within that, yes, again the division of that VPC into small areas. That is databases which are planning, or app servers which are planning, or web servers which are planning. Then we can divide into that subnets. But how do we define it? Or how do we define this VPC? The total area, again the total area, how do we subdivide it into it? That is as subnet. Yes, we use the CIDR notation. Classless interdomain routing. This is very important concept. Yeah, CIDR, the user for the security group rules. Even already we are observing that in the security group rules, source of IP addresses, defining that the 0000/0. What is the meaning of this 0000/0? Or here someone IP address is there with /32. What is the meaning of this one? Yeah, /0 if you define that all IP addresses, right? Yeah, /0 is nothing but all IPs. That means public. Any IP address which is receiving the request as allow it. Or if you have the particular IP address, yes, define that IP address /32. /32 is nothing but only one IP. But as per about our requirement, we can define that slash with some CIDR notation, CIDR number. But what about the CIDR number? Suppose here that examples, if you try to understand the CIDR number, yeah, understanding with the CIDR. So total it is the two components, CIDR. So one is the IP address, which is the four octets, octet 1, then 2, 3, 4. So dot is a separation, 4 octets, that is IP address. And subnet mask. Yes. So what is the subnet? Whatever we are creating about it, the total number of IP address, how many that is required in this subnet. That's we define with the CIDR notation slash some number for it. Suppose here example /26. What is the meaning of this 26? Can you give me that example? If I define that CIDR with /26, then how many IP address that we can have it in that subnet? Anyone? /26 is nothing but how many IP addresses that we can have it that. Do you know that concept? Suppose if I define this 10.0.0.0/26. So what is the meaning of this one? How many devices that we can have it in this? So first what do we do this is this 26 has to be subtracted from the 32. 32 minus 26. How much that is? 6 is the remainder. So what is the remainder we got it? To this remainder, what do we do that? 2 power of this 6. What is the 2 power of the 6? What is the 2 power of the 6? Yeah, that is 64. So that's total how many devices that we can have it here? It is 64 devices that we can have it. That means, so if I define this as CIDR, in this CIDR, it is allowing that subnet mask where you can have it 64 IP addresses. So that is the meaning of this. Is the CIDR which is indicating that to define the subnets. Suppose if I define that same thing with the something 24, then what is the meaning of this one? 32 minus 24, that is 8, and 2 power of 38, that is 256. That means 256 devices that's we can have it in this subnet mask. Or if I define the 0, 32 minus 0, what is that value? 32. 2 power 32 is nothing but 65,536, some approximately, yeah, that is a value. So those many IP addresses we can have it in this. Sorry, 2 power 32 this is, not 2 power 16. So that means it is almost 65,536 into 65,536, approximately 3.6 or 3.4 billion of that devices that we can have it in this. That is the overall total IP addresses. That is almost any IP address which is there, that is allowing that. That is the meaning of it. But if I define the 32 is nothing but 32 minus 32, that is 0. 2 power 0, what is the 2 power 0 value? That is 1. Only this IP address which will be allowed. That is the meaning of it. Yeah. So VPC defining is one thing. That is a total area or the total number of devices that is required. That is a planning about that. That is VPC definition with the CIDR. So once a CIDR VPC CIDR has been defined, that's we divided into subnets. But how do we divide that the subnets is? Yes, we use this CIDR notation again. Yeah, that is a concept, understanding about the CIDR. Yeah, that is a base IP address it contains and subnet mask which contains. Yeah, the base IP represents an IP contained in the range, and the subnet mask defines how many bits can change in the IP. Yes, how many bits that can be changed in that IP. That is number of devices point of view. Yeah, subnet mask we can define in the two formats, two forms, which we can say. One is this notation, 255.255.255.0. What is the meaning of this one is last octet is for device and the remaining three octets for the network. 255.255.255, this is for network ID, that means subnet ID, and within the subnet, device ID, yes. So which device it has to be routed, that is the last octet is going to representing that. This is less common in these days, especially in the cloud. We don't use it mostly this format, but what is the format? CIDR format we use. That is /24 or /16. So as the number of devices which are required. If I need the 10 devices, what is the CIDR I can use it? What is the device? What is the CIDR we can go for that? I need to have 10 IP addresses in the subnet. What is the CIDR? 2 power 3. That means 8. 8 I cannot use it because I need the 10, not 8. Then we need to go for 2 power 4. 2 power 4, okay, that is 16. I am going to get it. Okay, I can, I'm good with that. 10 devices, I'm going to get it in that subnet. So 2 power 4 is nothing but what is the CDR? Flash 28. Right? Are you getting the points on this? This is important. Before understanding about the VPCs with subnets dividing or division of about your the web server separate network, databases into the separate subnet, middleware servers into the separate subnet, or monitoring servers into the separate subnet, reporting servers into the separate subnet. VPC is only one, but we don't define all the services in the single subnet. We will divide into that public and private requirement point of view. But if you'd like to know that's division and everything, we should know about the subnet mask concept, CIDR concept. Yeah, let me conclude it. The CIDR subnet mask /32 is nothing but 2 power 0. That is only one IP address. Like the /31, that is 2 power 1. So /30, /29, /28. So like this, we can define it. The CIDR notations, the understanding about it. Whatever you have defined, -32 of it. And then whatever the value you are getting that, the remaining value, that is 2 power of it. That. Yeah, some important one. /32, no IP number. /24. So that is a 256 IP address that you will get it. That means last octet is for device and the remaining 3 octets for first 3 octets for network and last octet for the device. /16 is nothing but first 2 octets network, last 2 octets for IP address. Like the /8. Last IP3 numbers can change it. But first octet network ID, last 3 are for IP addresses. /0 is nothing but all IP address can change it. That means all octets. Yeah, what is what is the meaning of this one? What is the subnet? And how many IP address we can have it in this? How many octets for the network and how many octets for the device? /24 if you use it. Can you give me that quickly? /24. How many IP address at least from the subnet? 32 minus 24, that is 8, 2 power 8, 256 IP addresses. So especially last octet is going to change in that. And what is the /16? So here first two octets for the network and the last two octets for devices. That means 256 into 256. That is 65,536 IP address. We can have it in this subnet mask. And /32, as we know, the same IP address. /0, all IPs. Yeah, so this is the best site. Whenever you have this kind of CIDRs to define it, yeah, you can use it this ipaddressguide.com/CIDR. Let me just use it this. Yeah, suppose you have this CIDR like a 10.0.0.0/24 or something 26 which we have, and if you would like to calculate it. So what is the starting IP address? What is the ending IP address and total how many IP addresses we can get it? Yes, you can calculate that. Now you see this is the CIDR we have defined, and this is the subnet mask for it. Actually, another form we are talking this, right? 255, 255, 255, that format. Yes, what is the subnet mask is? This is the subnet mask for it, /26. And yeah, the first IP address from this one is, this is the first IP address. And total how many IP address we can get it? 64 IP addresses we can get it. And what is the last IP address is? This is the last IP address for it. That means 0 to 63 we can have it. Total 64 IP addresses we can use it in this subnet. Or if you have the something as we're talking the 24. So what is this 24 meaning? Yeah, this is the subnet mask for it. And the last octet is especially for the device. So which starts from the 0, 10, 0, 0, the first IP address 0, and last IP address is 255. The total 256 IP address we can have it from this CIDR. Or suppose if I define that something /0. So it is saying this invalid CIDR format. Why it is saying this invalid is because we are defining that 10. From the 10, we cannot get it only, 3 billion, right? So 000, yes, we can use it in this format, the 0. That means all IP address notation. Yeah, it is not taking about it, this format, the 00 representation, that is all IP address representation. Or another format which we have this is suppose you have this range of IP addresses. Suppose you, for about your database subnet, you need to have it something 20 IP addresses, which are starting from that 10.0.0.0.2. You would like to use it 10.0.0.20. This is about your IP range of IP address which you would like to use it. Starting IP address is this one and ending IP address this one. But what is the IP? What is the CIDR for it? If you like to define in the security groups or NACLs, VPCs, you need to know the CIDR. But you know that, yes, this is the starting my IP address and this is about your ending IP address. But what is the CIDR for it? Yes, if you do this calculation, yeah, so you can see that CIDR which is showing about it, the 10.0.0/28. 28 if I use it, 2 power 4. 2 power 4, that is a 16 IP address. No, it is not giving that. So you need to use it this one and as well as this one and this one. Then you will get it these number of IP addresses. So 30 is going to give to the 4. So here it is, what is this going to give it? 16 plus 4, 20, and this is the last IP address, the same IP address. So total 3 CIDRs it is showing about it. Or if you have the something like exact the figure, that is something 15. That means I need to have the 16 IP addresses. 16 we have this, right? 16 to get it we have this. That is a slash 28. Directly you can use it. Or if I need that 31. 2 power, yes, 32. I mean the total 32 devices. That is supporting this 2 power. Then we will get it a direct area for it. That is slash 27. But if you specify that some invalid of that 2 power, then it is going to give the multiple CDRs which we can use it to define that. Are you clear about this understanding? If you have the CIDR notation, so what is the starting IP, what is the ending IP, total how many devices that we can have it in this, that's we can get it with the CIDR to IP range. Or you have that IP range, but you need to get it the CIDR for it. Then define this about your IP range. Then it is going to give the CIDR for it. Which is CIDR, you can use it for that IP ranges. So are you clear this? I just shared that link to everyone in the chat group, which you can try to refer it and explore it that. Yeah, so that's about understanding one of the important thing before going to work with the VPCs, that is CIDR notation. And within that CIDR also one more important point is on the basis of the public subnets, private subnets which are going to create it, we need to use it allowed IP ranges. Yeah, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, yes, IANA, established certain blocks of IPv4 addresses for the use of private and public addresses. So what are those IP addresses is? So 10 series, 10.0.0.0. If you see this anywhere about the 10 series, that is about private IP address. And mostly this will be used in the big networks. Like almost the slash 8 is nothing but 2 power 24 those many IP addresses that it is providing that. So the huge networks or the big networks, we use it 10 series to define the private subnets. Next one is which we have this is 172.16 series. 172.16 to 172.31. If you see this range of IP addresses, then that's also which can be considered as a private IP addresses. And within that, AWS, any instance you have launched, we see this most of that the IP addresses which belong to that private IP addresses which belong to that 172.16 or 31 series. So this is getting used by that AWS one default VPC that is created with this subnet with this ADR. And home networks, like in our home or some limited number of devices if you're planning, then this is the subnet mask which will be used 192.168.0.0. That is a slash 16. That means 65,536 devices you can have. So remaining all the rest of IP addresses on the internet are public. These will be private. 10 series, 172.16 to 172.31 series, or 192.168 series. If you see thus any IP address with these range, we will be using these range of IP addresses for the private. Remaining any one of the IP address, if you see, these are all belong to that public IP. Yeah, whenever we are defining the VPCs, either we use a 10 series or 172 series or 192 series, which we use it as a private subnets. Are you clear about this? The subnets understanding? Yeah. Before moving into that, yeah, sorry. Yeah, before moving into that about our custom VPC, let me just conclude about the default VPC. Yes, whenever we are creating that EC2 instance, by default it will be it is going to use the network, that is VPC, a default VPC. So all new accounts have a default VPC. That means whatever the region we are using, that in that region, each region is going to have one default the VPC, and the new instances whatever we are launching in that region, so that instance which will be in which network that will be launching this is, that is into default VPC if no subnet is explicitly specified. Yeah, default VPC have internet connectivity. Yes, that's why whenever we are launching the TC2 instance, and after connecting that, if you are trying to install the packages, or if you are going to doing some net-based activities, internet is available. Yeah, default VPC is providing that by default net connectivity, internet connectivity, and all instances have public IP. And we also get a public and private DNS names. Maybe if you have observed about it, whenever we launch the EC2 instance, we will get it the public DNS name and a private DNS name with the public IP. With all these properties, by default, the EC2 instance is launching that. So this is about the default VPC, any instance which are launching that. Yeah, let me just show that. Suppose if you go to that AWS account, yeah, so I'm in the Mumbai region, or if you go to this like VPC, yeah, in each region, in the VPC section, we will get it one default VPC. And some default subnets also it is providing. And some routing tables, internet gateways. Routing table is kind of Wi-Fi, that is router or switch. What is the internet gateway? Is kind of the modem, which is providing about it external communication, that is internet-based communication. If you need it, internet gateway is required. And NACLs, we are talking about it, network ACLs. Before entering into that subnet, before entering into that, the subnet, the network rules that will be evaluated are, yes, that's the firewalls kind of the stuff before entering into the subnet, that is network ACLs. And security groups already we know about it, that is about before entering into the EC2 instance. And we have another concept, NAT gateways. I will come back. This is for the private subnets. Internet gateway is for the public, right? Internet to access it. We use that the external modems, It is kind of internet gateway. But internal, the private subnets, how do you get it internet is, that is NAT gateways will use it. They will come back to that. And instances, gateways, elastic IPs. Already we were talking that elastic IP concept. Yes, if you need that one public static IP address, yes, which we can go for using elastic IP. So what are the public IP address which is assigning to that EC2 instance? That is temporarily, right? Whenever we restore the instance, IP address is going to change. But if you need that permanent IP address, then we need to use the elastic IP. Yeah, there are some important resources. And as we are talking about it, yes, by default, one VPC which is going to have it in each region. Yes, this is the default VPC. This is yeah, this is a VPC ID and state is available. And you see, if you have just observed that CIDR, what is the CIDR that is defined for this VPC is AWS by default, it is going to use it 172.31.00/16. /16 is nothing but 65,536 devices. We can launch it or we can take that those many IP addresses from this CIDR. IPv6 by default, it is not enabled. And DHCP options and routing table. Routing table is kind of router. As a Wi-Fi, how do we have to map into the backend devices? The routing table is going to helpful, and it is having that NACL. And this is default VPC. Yes, this is the default VPC. One region is going to have one default VPC, but we can create about our custom VPCs with about our own CIDR notation. But yes, how do you identify that which one is the default VPC in that? Suppose you have created like 4 or 5 VPCs, but how do you know that which one is the default VPC is? Yeah, the default VPC, this is the default VPC, which is marked yes. And in which tenancy? Tenancies, is it a shared one or is it a dedicated one? So this is the default, that is the shared one. Normal, that is the normal VPC. Yeah, that is about the default VPC. So any instance we are launching is nothing but it is going to use it. This VPC is a subnets. So that VPC is having that subnet. Yes, there are all the subnets. And these subnets which will be created on the base of availability zone. Yes, one subnet. Yes, whenever you are creating a subnet, you need to define the data center. So like 3 subnets which we have, and 3 subnets in this region, as this region contain the 3 availability zones. Yeah, 1A one subnet is available, 1B another subnet is available, 1C another subnet is available. Yeah, total 3 subnets which have been given that by default, the VPC. And yes, this is the VPC ID and this is a CIDR for it. So you see the /20/20/20 with that CIDR which has been defined. Yeah, 172.31, that is a VPC CIDR. Within that again, subnets have been defined. One is 32.0, second one is 0.0, third one is 16.0. 3 subnets which have been created. And how many IP addresses we can have it? 4091 IP addresses. That's we are going to get it this. Actually, this is the 4096 IP addresses. As a /20 is nothing but 4096 we will get it. But 5 IP addresses that will be used by AWS internally. Whenever you create one subnet, from that subnet, 5 IP addresses by default that is going to take it by the AWS internally, internal purpose. That means we will get it. Suppose if we define that /2. Yeah, so 4091 IP addresses. Why it is 4091? It is showing that actually 4096 we need to get it from each subnet as a /20 point of view. That means 5 IP addresses internal that is getting used by AWS from each subnet. That means if it is required for, for about our subnet something 20 IP addresses is nothing but you need to plan it 20 plus 5. That is a 25 IP addresses CIDR you need to take it that. Because from each subnet, 5 IP addresses that will be used by AWS. Yeah, so this is the default VPC, and within that VPC, so that's like on the base of availability zones, by default it is given that 3 subnets. And each subnet, these many IP address we can have it, and this is a CIDR for it. Yeah, that's about that default one. But tomorrow we will talk about it. How do we create about our custom VPC with the CIDR definition? That VPC, how do you go ahead defining with the subnets with internet gateways, that is internet to get it, and routing tables, how to define it, and then how do we define the NAT gateways, and NAT gateways using that, how do you get it internet to the private subnets, and then we will try to launch it about EC2 instances, and we'll the public subnet, private subnet. If it is the private subnet, the internet not available, then how do we get it internet? We'll see this with the practical. Are a clear understanding this, the CIDR and VPC, some important terminologies. We didn't discuss anything, nothing about it, but CIDR concept is important. So the subnet mask defining that with the CIDR notation is very, very important before talking about the VPC. Like if you're going to buy the flat, yes, how do you know? I mean, we should know about it, like square feet concept. The same thing before going to talk about the VPC, we should know about the CIDR concept. As the number of devices or IP addresses requirement based for about your web layer, app layer, database layer. So creating the subnets and planning about the VPC, that is very, very important. But anyway, that is the octets will come into the picture. But instead of going blindly defining that the VPCs and all the subnets, so you are defining that one CIDR is nothing but yes, what is the background or how many IP addresses we are going to get it from this. And if you're going to define the private subnets, yes, which IP addresses that we use it. That is a 10 series, 172 series, and 192.168 series. Yeah, all these concepts are the important in the networks. Yes, tomorrow we'll talk about it, VPC creation and public and private subnets, how to create it, and how do we launch the resources, that is easy to ensure we'll take it, and we launch into the public and the private, and how to get that internet to those instances which are launching in the public and private. We'll see practically, that's tomorrow. Any queries, questions, please? Yeah, try to complete that project. So that would be, that is required, and try to complete that as early as possible. And once VPC, after that, like a CloudWatch concepts are available. And one that is done, again, I will give that one more real-time project, which really helpful. How do you go ahead with all these VPC, CDRs, public, private, subnets creation, auto scaling group creation with routing, with load balancer routing rules. So we have those like one project, that project you need to work it on it that. Yeah, so that's all from my side for today. So we'll meet tomorrow and we'll see the practical demonstration of this VPC. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.